Look, it's pretty simple. When it comes to your personal life, whether it's your cell phone, computer, medical records, bank accounts, people like privacy. It didn't take long after Bitcoin for people to realize it's great technology, but it does not offer the level of transactional privacy that many want. Hence came privacy coins such as the one Monero that we're going to talk about today. Here's how I like to explain Bitcoin. There's 10 people in a room and there's 10 bank accounts floating around in the air. Now, what's floating around is the amount of each account. Now, what we do know is one person has the least amount at $5 and one person has the most at $10 million. And of course, all the other amounts in between. You see, in this scenario, the only people who know who owns what account is each individual. Everyone can see the transactions and what's going on with each account, but only you know which account is yours and have the access to it. So we can compare that to the private key. See, with Monero, it's about people not being able to see which account is whose and also not being able to see the transactional data along with it. It's the true rites of passage in terms of privacy concerning the blockchain. So just remember that about Bitcoin and of course many of the other cryptocurrencies, not privacy coins. The owner does have anonymity, but the transactional data can be researched and can be seen by others. So before we get deep into Monero, first of all, we have to turn back the hands of time and talk about Bytecoin. Now, Monero is a fork of Bytecoin. Bytecoin is the first implementation of CryptoNote, which is an application layer that was aimed at solving Bitcoin's issues with traceability, miner centralization, and irregular coin emission. So Bytecoin launched in 2014, but there was one glaring issue. It was an 80% pre-mine. That is about the farthest thing from a fair launch that you can get. So of course, many of the members in the community were not having it. No worries. A Bitcoin Talk forum user that went by the name Thankful for Today decided to fork the code base of Bytecoin into a project called Monero. And that's Bit for Bitcoin and Monero is coin in Esperanto. Well, unfortunately, the community members just weren't feeling Monero. This led 7 community members to fork Monero into a project that we now know today as Monero. Now, for the most part, these 7 community members remained unknown except for the lead, who is Richard Spagni, who went by the name of Fluffy Pony. Yes, that's correct. He went by the name of Fluffy Pony. This time, things were done in a way that we'll say was called a fair launch. There was no pre-mine, and this project, Monero, was launched in April of 2014. Remember that I am not a financial advisor. Before you invest, you should seek the help of a professional. Now, let's fast forward. Because of its privacy features, let's get straight to it. Monero is one of the most widely used cryptocurrencies on the dark web. If nothing else, that should tell you it's working pretty good. But I think you should keep in mind when it comes to all the hit pieces and various pieces of bad information you see out there about Bitcoin and how it's used for money laundering, there is a better alternative than Bitcoin for this when we're talking cryptocurrencies. And make not the mistake that the number one way that money is laundered is still the US dollar. So it's important to keep that in mind because, believe it or not, many people do get thrown off when they hear these things about cryptocurrencies, but we always have to keep the facts where the facts are. And while we're on bad information, let's really quickly touch on the $2.3 million that federal agents recovered from the Colonial Pipeline hackers. Of course, you're hearing all kinds of information about how Bitcoin may not be safe anymore because these agents were able to retrieve this Bitcoin. What I will say is I'm going to put a link in the description to a Market Watch article that explains it. If you are concerned about it and concerned about the security of Bitcoin, I'd say you probably want to take a closer look because how it was retrieved isn't quite how it's being explained across many forums, and we know we have to watch out for mainstream media. Colonial Pipeline did reach out to the FBI and let them know about the ransom instructions, which let them know where the ransom was being sent, and I believe it was good old-fashioned investigating and maybe a tad of sloppiness on the behalf of these hackers, but as I said, that's for another day. Check the article out. I just always like to help to keep from FUD when it is happening. And I think it is important that if you hold Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, period, you should stay in the know about what's going on and don't just believe anything you hear. If you do have any questions about the article that I can maybe answer, leave a comment and I'll certainly try. Okay, so let's get to the nitty-gritty. How does Monero work? Monero uses proof of work consensus. It runs a proof of work algorithm called RandomX, which uses random code execution. Now, the hard fork is initiated every 6 months to implement upgrades. The proof of work is often changed to help it remain ASIC resistant. This is great because it can be mined with a CPU. From a cost perspective, this is a good thing, and this helps against centralization. What I would say is a central part of Monero's technology is ring signatures. Now, these mask senders' identities and offer single-use keys. Now, this is what makes the transactions untraceable. And how these ring signatures work, they merge a group of senders together, which helps with the anonymity. The group contains the actual signers, single-use keys, and past transactions from the blockchain. So imagine it being all jumbled up, because what this does is make the transactions indistinguishable. However, it is important to know that a ring signature only provides anonymity to the sender. Well, in 2017, because of concerns about that and wanting complete anonymity both ways, ring CTs were invented. And ring CTs are ring confidential transactions. Now, ring CTs obscure the transaction amounts for each entry and also obscure the transaction address. In 2018, bulletproofs were implemented. Bulletproofs are a non-interactive, zero-knowledge proof, and they do not require a trusted setup. This addressed scalability issues and reduced the size of its confidential transactions by 80%. This made it way more efficient. So you can see where they've had to address some things and tweak it over the years, but it is giving you a final product that in terms of privacy is phenomenal and still done in the old school blockchain fashion by proof of work. XMR is the native token of the Monero network, and at its simple definition, it's used for peer-to-peer payments and also as a store of value. Now, in May of 2022, Monero is going to reach its total supply of 18.4 million XMR. So I'm sure you're thinking, well, what happens when it gets there? Well, that's where it is a bit interesting, and that is where some people do have concerns. When it does reach that, there will still be incentives for the miners. Because remember, you still have to keep the blockchain secure. And that incentive will be that there will still be block rewards even after that total of 18.4 million have been reached. And that reward will be 0.6 XMR per block. So it is important to remember that this is indefinitely. As I mentioned, some people are upset because unlike Bitcoin, this does not have a hard cap. But what you have to remember is it will address any issues that would have likely come at that time with will the network still be secured? Because what is the incentive to secure the network if you're not going to get a reward for it? And that will be after May of 2022. Something else to keep in mind about Monero is you can use subaddresses. That's a whole nother rabbit hole that we're not going to go down today, but it really is something you should look into. And because of that, I'm going to put a link to a video about subaddresses, how you can use them, and what they are for in the description below. Even when I don't speak on certain aspects of it, I may do a video to follow up later, but I do want to provide you, whether it be through various links or sources, with places in the description that you can go and get the information for yourself, because when it comes to these projects, you need to be informed. And some of that you're going to have to go and do a little searching, but I will provide as much of it as possible. When it comes to concerns about Monero, let's face it, Uncle Sam hates Monero's guts. The IRS does not believe that most people are being honest when it comes to crypto, how much crypto they have, and their use of crypto. So we've previously seen where the IRS has offered a $625,000 bounty for whoever can crack Monero's code. There's increasing fears from organizations that will be used for ransom in cyber attacks. Whether it's cracked or not, the IRS is not going to let up on trying to get to the bottom of these privacy coins. Many exchanges have delisted privacy coins because of the inherent issues that come from a regulatory standpoint. Obviously, if you're getting them on exchanges and the government cracks down on said exchanges, that's going to help part of the problem. But if you dig deep enough, you're going to be able to get Monero XMR anyway. So that's not going to really have the effect that the government would probably like. But because of that, there's just simply going to be some exchanges that aren't going to have Monero listed. You're likely to see these other coins, such as I mentioned earlier, whether it was Dash or Zcash, where they do at least have it to where privacy is optional. So because it's optional, they can probably still get away with having it listed. But where Monero does not have that feature, it's just not going to be on certain exchanges. Doesn't mean you can't get your hands on it if you would like to. And what I mentioned earlier, some people are concerned with the fact that it isn't a fixed supply completely. Different people feel differently about that. I do think the aspect that it will remain a secure blockchain is very important. Obviously, with Bitcoin reaching that place one day where it's fully mined, we'll arrive at that point. The difference is there's a long time, relatively speaking, before it's completely mined versus Monero reaching that point in May of next year. Some people have fears that privacy coins will be banned. I do think you can see that certainly as a problem, but let me just remind you really quickly about what happens when things are banned by the government. Let's compare it to prohibition in the United States between 1920 and 1933. Keep in mind, other countries around the world had prohibition as well, so it's not only the US, it's happened in various places. This did not stop the sale of alcohol. In fact, it made it worse. And not only did it make the sale of alcohol worse, it's all about supply and demand, so actually the prices went up. So you could make the argument that a ban on Monero could only force the price of the asset up. I'll actually put the idea of it being banned as a concern, but it actually being banned, that may end up being a positive. Because let's face it, some of these things are just hard to regulate. Now, I see the fact that Monero's privacy is not optional as the very thing that's going to make it the premier and has made it the premier privacy coin. That would be the reason why it's likely the one that's most used on the dark web. Now, each person's opinion is going to gear the different things I'm discussing towards whether they think it's a pro or a con. But ultimately, if it's privacy you want with Monero, it is privacy that you will get. When it comes to the price, currently, at the time of this recording, Monero is $270.88. There are 17.9 million in the current circulating supply. As you can see and we discussed, we're getting to that number of 18.4 million. And the market cap is currently at $4.85 billion. Look, this cryptocurrency has a lot of upside. The way I see it is, with the ever-changing landscape in the cryptocurrency world, people's desire for privacy is not going anywhere anytime soon. So much upside with this project, so I have no doubt about this project and that it is going to see positive price action in my mind over time. Crypto is only going to become more sought after over time. If you're already holding the premier privacy coin, you have a leg up on everybody else. I do not currently hold any XMR myself, but I do like this project a lot. Hope you enjoyed the content. I Hope you learned something today. There will be links in the description. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. For each and every subscriber, I greatly appreciate it. Make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to hit the bell for notification. Make sure that you leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. I greatly appreciate the comments and I enjoy the back and forth. Whether you disagree on something or you do agree, it always helps to leave a comment. And once again, thanks for watching Very Unlikely, and I will see you next time.